So we have a chair and a vice chair. Thank you, and Councillor Graham. If you need, I need you to stand in. I know. Let's go. So now that's over, I'd just like to just formally welcome you all to Abbey House in Abingdon, home of Falcon Vale District Council. And thank you to everybody joining us in the room today and online. I would go on to the chair's announcements, which are the sort of standard things that you do. So I need to remind everybody that the meeting is being recorded and live streamed. Meeting chat should be used for messages about speaking and technical issues, no private discussions. But please do use the raise the hand function if you wish to speak. I would encourage everyone to ensure their microphones are off, or that they are fully muted when they're speaking. When speaking, give your name and organisation. Obviously, any mobile phones, people do use them, but just be aware that we are being recorded. And please have them on mute. If we have an evacuation, follow Kevin. Thank you. It's just straight out the door and round to the right. So I will head on to minutes. So anybody who was here, have you had a chance to look at the minutes of the last meeting held here on the 24th of April 2026? Yeah, you.
Yes. I propose to adopt the minutes as I was there.
As a true and accurate record. Yeah. I think Councillor Claim, do you? Just on. Yes. Thank you. I also I second Councillor Graham. It's a true and accurate record. Apologies for that. I've never had that instance happen. So thank you for that. Item 4, public participation. I don't believe we have anybody here as a member of the public who wishes to speak. So straight on to item number 5, the Oxfordshire Leaders Straight Committee appointments 2027. We've got 2 things to decide. It's a councillor appointment on behalf of the committee to the England's Economic Heart and Strategic Transport Forum, and also on behalf of the committee to the Oxfordshire Local Names Partnership. Would you like to deal with that? Or do you want me to?
I'm happy to, Chair. So the nominations for the EEH position. Is that from the Chair?
Yes. So I would like to nominate Councillor Graham. This position goes to the Vice Chair. So, does anybody want to second one proposal? Thank you, Councillor McLean. So, is everybody agreed? Thank you. Congratulations, you've got England's Economic Partners.
Sure, I'll enjoy it. Thank you very much.
Yes. And we can. So, do we have any nomination for the representative for the Local Nature Partnership?
Propose Councillor McLean.
Thank you. Any seconders? Councillor Railton. Anybody agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. Congratulations. So much. Very nice one to be on, I believe. I've never been on it, but it's so I think we can move on from that. So everything's agreed. Do we need to talk about anything else, or is that?
No, that's fine.
So item 6, summary of outcomes from this first report, summary of outcomes from ZCOP's emissions and influence project. Now this is being presented by Bart Ashton, ZCOP Partnership Manager, Oxford City Council. Welcome and thank you for coming. I believe you're going to talk us through where we are. And I've been asked if you could introduce yourself and just explain a bit about sort of basics about your based in the city and
Yep.
thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for inviting me to talk to this report. So my name, as you said, is Bart Ashton, and I'm currently the Zero Carbon Oxfordshire Partnership Manager. I'm actually taking this role on maternity cover. Sam Morgan Price was the permanent post holder, and she, I think, probably presented it to this meeting last year. So I've been in the role since January. The Zero Carbon, as it started, Oxford Partnership in 2021, was Oxford City based, coming out of the Citizens Assembly in that year, and worked successfully, I think, with within the City Council and with stakeholders beyond in the county and other non-local authority partners, commercial businesses and anchor institutions in the city for 4 years. And it was decided to expand that model out to Oxfordshire last year, 2025. So in a way, that's one of the reasons for this work, to understand the implications of that, not just in terms of who should be the partners or the members in the partnership, or what kind of areas should it cover, what difference would that make to the work that we're undertaking. So this is where this project came from. I think it's worth also saying that as far as I can see, looking back before January, when I started, this ZCOP's time in the City Council, it was very effective. It was used collaboratively as a tool on a number of different projects the City Council had, where the interaction of local authorities and commerce and industry was particularly useful, and that's what brought that partnership together. I think it's probably been a bit harder to get that moving at county level, which is one of the reasons for the recommendations in the report. So this group allocated some funding, which allowed us to bring in a consultant to help with this project. That's why I'm here to report back to you. But the outcomes, the process which we followed to try and get to the results are in the report. And unless anyone's got any real queries, I wasn't going to go through those in detail. More interesting probably to talk about the outcomes and what was concluded. The outcomes are set out so on page 20 on the pack onwards for a few pages up until 22, 23, and they're sort of grouped together in different work sections. So like heat decarbonisation for buildings, transport decarbonisation, and some other newer topics which are more relevant as a county partnership than a city partnership, such as nature, land use, agriculture, and so on. So those are set out with quick summary, the relevant consultant reports, and the kind of desired outcomes that might be achieved by partnership working. Not to forget at the top of page 23 some of the work that was already happening at ZCOP as a city partnership, which is very translatable to ZCOP as a county partnership, including what was called the ZCOP Industrial Cluster, which came out of a project funded by DESNES in 2024-5, and climate adaptation work, which is becoming more and more important, as we can feel in this hot day here in the Southern Vale. And it's certainly going to be required because at least 1.5, 2 or maybe more degrees climate change is baked in until 2050. So those two work streams continue on to the carbon extractions account. So I think that's, I don't want to just go over the words that are written. You've all had a chance to read those. The recommendations that came with this report were, first of all, thank you for giving me the chance to talk to you about them and then you note them. That we recognise the constraint challenge. So ZCOP is mostly resourced as me at the moment. I can definitely do stuff, but I can't do infinite stuff when it's just me. And that's why I mentioned earlier that some of the most successful projects that came out of ZCOP as a city population were that the collaboration between the industry, or the anchor institutions, the local authority, and the commercial partners. That is a good recipe for success. If we can gain some of those collaborations around some of these projects, I think we will do well. But ZCOP isn't even a legal entity, and I can't apply for grant funding, even my own. It has to be done in partnership. And the final recommendation was sort of thinking how these themes, not necessarily the specific actions, because those can flex to suit the need for those themes, how those could work in the different districts in Oxfordshire as they are at the moment. And and there was always a collaboration. Well, that's going to lead to impact. I think that's going to lead to what I should say.
Yeah, it's good to see the work that you're doing in collaboration and partnership with other local authorities.
Yeah.
My question is where we go from here, because clearly you've just said that it's just you, and that isn't good enough for us as local authorities. I think we need to actually give this a bit more leverage and a bit more weight, and I kind of think otherwise it tends to kind of come across as good work, but does it have impact? And the impact I'm saying in terms of the bigger picture of climate change, which is significant now, as we know, and what we need to do is to raise the capacity, if as a partnership possibly, and to give it a framework so as the legal entities can actually have some traction. And in a sense, my recommendation for us to consider would be whether we as a joint committee would consider actually developing a framework for this work to actually have that legal entity in order for us to have greater impact in the work and the initiatives that are taken forward, and that the funding that you need in order to do that could be a useful lever to it. So it's kind of a question and a statement in a way. Would that really help in terms of the work that you're spearheading, albeit on a maternity leave basis, but you are where you are?
Yeah.
Would you see that as being a useful recommendation to add to those that are in the report?
Thank you for the comments and the question. I guess I should probably point out it's not singly just me. There are other people working with me in all of your districts as well. In the West, but I'm the person that's putting it together. I would definitely welcome the sentiment of which is we should work together to achieve more impact. That could be through a vehicle that's a legal entity that allows it to be on its own. That could definitely be one way of doing it. I don't think that's necessary. It could continue on the basis that we did in the city council, where the city council would put in the funding. So that could be with collaborations, but it would have to be on a firmer footing or a more agreed basis than it is at the moment. Could be a legal entity, or it could just be a firmer collaboration. But certainly more resource and the ability to be able to act independent could be useful.
Yeah, but I think the framework is so important to have, rather than the second option, which you said, well, we could, and we could develop the partnership as it stands. But I kind of think we're losing the main point, which is I'm making, which is the actual traction that we need, and that you can only do it with a legal entity like a framework. If we are committed to developing the partnership, certainly from West, my perspective of it is, let's either give it greater clout than what it's got at the moment, and the resource it needs in order to do that work further is that legal framework. I don't know if other people share the same view, but that's the way I'd like to see it going forward.
I guess sort of thinking back to sort of various grants and stuff we got before, the fact that ZCOP couldn't apply on its own wasn't a real problem, because it would always be done in partnership with like BMW or the city or like whoever. So I think I think sort of resourcing it properly is much more of a more pressing thing than it's actually like
But what I'm saying is just coming back to the same point, is if you want to resource it better, you're going to need the legal framework in order to actually obtain that resources, because you've got greater credibility as a legal entity. So it's which way you do it. You can continue doing the work, which is fine, but it's not as impactful in terms of the amount of resources potentially you could And us exploring that and asking officers to go away and explore that will actually just tease that out a bit more, because I've only just raised it for the meeting, but.
You did say.
No, that's my
Yeah.
proposition, is that officers go away and potentially explore it and see if the legal framework will actually do that.
Is that something? Yeah. It's the- Yeah. So, Councillor Fawcett.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I think it's probably worth having a quick look at it. I think the question has to be, will it actually enable us to do the things that we can't already do? If it would, and we want to do those things, then obviously we should look at it. But I think we, there's no way of doing it for the sake of it.
So, I was just adding here, it's just that officers can take it and just have a quick job review in field. Yeah. And just see if there's anything that might be helpful. As Councillor Fawcett said, there's no point doing it just for the sake of doing it, but if it is going to actually add some value, and allow a show of greater commitment, then more.
Can I just, the other point I just wanted to raise is that, from a national perspective, if we did that, it would give us a greater voice in governmental circles by actually having that framework there, as opposed to something that we're just doing here in Oxfordshire. You know, there's potentially a greater voice there. Don't know if you comment, but
Potentially, I think that probably all of this ties back to the impact that's going to be made possible or actually happen through ZCOP, whether it's a legal entity or not. And so if something is impactful and starts making waves, then people will listen. If the framework gives it a chance to actually do more, then that will also be good. So I don't think it necessarily flows, but it could be a benefit. I think the real challenge is not necessarily the legal framework, but how it's resourced. To have a legal entity that then is not supported could be counterproductive. So with the entity must come the support. It must, I think it's worth looking at, must be able to do more. Otherwise it's not useful. And that comes down to the opportunities to collaborate on these topics and others.
I think clearly officers can go away and look at that. I think the question I would have is, what evidence do we have that that structure would actually enable us to get better external funding from elsewhere? Because if there is, then fine, let's look at it. If there isn't, then it is just wasted effort.
Is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, I think those are the points that I want to bring out from the report. The more we can work together on these topics and really try to focus on topics that will be impactful if we can work together, the more we can work together on these, the better it will be, and I'm ready to work on them.
Thank you very much. Any further comments from the room? So I'd like to move to the recommendations. Speaking, so I'll just read them out quickly. So the recommendations of this item is that the Oxfordshire Joint Committee notes the work completed in the project and its outputs. That the leaders recognise the partner contribution funding model does not cover all the priority work, and additional resource would be required to select the new projects as well as business as usual. And what you were trying to highlight. And that the leaders consider ways in which the output project can thrive and how to engage and support them in their regions. So any further comments?
Chair,
Oh, sorry, Andy's. Do you have some words?
I've finessed it, but I think I'll explore possibilities and disadvantages of the legal framework. Where's that?
Thank you. Yes, thank you very much, Kevin. So there's 4 recommendations, the 3 on paper and the 1 that's just been added. Do I have a 20,000?
If everyone's in content.
Everybody in agreement? Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. You can stay or there. So now we're going on the Oxfordshire Inclusive Economy Partnership and the annual report of January 2025 to March 2026. So thank you, Emma.
I'm Emma Coles and I'm the Partnership Manager for the Oxfordshire Inclusive Economy Partnership. Those of you who are familiar with the partnership, we bring together in collaboration with business, local authorities, the public sector organisations, community groups, education, universities, etc., to address barriers and create more opportunities for everyone in Oxfordshire to contribute to a more inclusive economy. So I'm really delighted to present our annual report to you. This is a really great opportunity to highlight the work that we've been doing over the past sort of 15 months, as well as being able to share that success with our members and other external organisations through publication on our website. The slide on the screen is just a sort of smorgasbord of activity that's captured within the annual report. The report covers January 2025 to March 2026, but going forward, it will be following the financial year. Within the report, you'll have seen it includes excerpts from our work plan, which includes reg statuses against each of our objectives. The ratings, which are amber, are objectives that started in the last reporting year but needed to be carried over for a variety of reasons. And then the ones that have red ratings generally relate to objectives that require some more resource or capacity to take them forward. So in terms of activity over the past, in 2025-26, we very sadly said goodbye to one of our co-chairs and co-founders of the OIEP, Baroness Jan Royal. That was after she completed her tenure as principal of Somerville College. But we've also welcomed Dame Professor Julia Black, who's on the picture on the screen, and she is a warden of Nuffield College amongst other roles, and she will continue with our other co-chair, Jeremy Long. We've had some changes to our areas of focus, as well as a new chair for our Inclusive Employment Working Group, Tom Story. We've also looked to change our Educational Attainment Working Group to focus on with a slightly different focus to children and young people, and then creating two subgroups beneath that, which is early years and primary, chaired by Donna Husband from Public Health. And that group is focusing on supporting the early years system, voluntary action for literacy in primary schools, and parental advocacy. And then our Youth Futures Working Group is chaired by Emmy O'Shaughnessy from Oxfordshire Youth, and that's focusing on people who are neat or facing a disadvantage to access education or employment through our focus is going to be around work experience, parent and carer engagement, and green skills. So some other key highlights from our year. So at the beginning of last year, we hosted the Early Years Summit in partnership with the County Council and the ICB and the University of Oxford. So it was one of the first of its kind event for Oxfordshire, bringing together practitioners, researchers, employers, and system leaders to focus on how those earliest years can shape those long-term outcomes for children, and then how can partners work differently across sectors to create that support for families in Oxfordshire. We hosted 2 HR network seminars, which is something we've created for our Inclusive Employment Working Group, bringing together employers and then experts in particular areas to share that knowledge and encourage people to think differently about their recruitment processes. So those 2 seminars were focused on supporting people furthest from employment, as well as supporting care leavers into employment. And that seminar led to Oxfordshire Youth hosting what's called the Reimagined Jobs Fair Rise for almost 40 young people at David Lloyd's in Oxford. I've taken on the role as the co-chair of the Employment Advisory Board at Willingdon Prison, alongside Paul Humperson of Tap Social, which helps further strengthen our work to support prison leavers into employment. We've been building case studies of our charter signees to promote their great work and encourage others to follow. Our inclusive employment working group will now be monitoring the Oxfordshire Works, a local Get Britain working plan. We've held a social value seminar and hosted a panel session on social value at the Meet and Fire event in February. And then in terms of resources, we've secured funding for social value brokerage across the county and for a part-time project manager for the Oxfordshire Anchor Network, and she started in post on the 18th of May. And there's now gathering information and working with the different anchors to understand baselining where they are and where we can add the greatest value to supporting those organisations to take forward their ambitions around inclusive employment and social value. I'd just like to say we're really grateful for the ongoing support of the partnerships team, especially Kevin, Amber and Becky, and also grateful for the additional support of graduate placements from the county and Oxford City, as well as part of the Economy Projects Officer within Oxford City's time, which supports our charter support, case study development and managing our LinkedIn page. Support from all of you across the local authorities is greatly appreciated and really enables us to engage with other organisations across the county to help them to further their journey around inclusive economy. We've also been really lucky to participate in 2 research projects. One is called COLIF, which was creating opportunities through local innovation scholarships programme. That was a 6-month research project working with Exeter University and Cardiff University, looking at inclusive economy through a YUP lens, with the outcome of a publication called Partnering for Inclusive Employment, a guide for local economies, which sets out different approaches that organisations can use to improve their access to employment and reducing inequality. And then the other project that we participated in was the University of Oxford SDG Impact Lab, and that was looking at current local and national literacy and numeracy support models. We're looking at how can we support especially literacy within primary schools, because we know that children that are not reaching the expected standards of literacy at the end of primary school, the gap just widens once they go to secondary. And then we're using those recommendations this year to try and build that across the county. We've also focused on wider engagement through the Oxford Growth Commission, Marmot, CESRO and Equinox, as well as continuing to build through strategic connections with the local nature partnership and ZCOP through our work on green skills, as well as various opportunities to raise the profile of the partnership, like COLIF, and panel sessions at the Oxfordshire Business Summit, amongst others. I think in a year where we face a multitude of change, we've still delivered well against our objectives, and we have a lot of exciting plans for the coming year. And the recommendations for this group are to note this report, progress in this report, and to note the importance of continuing support to the partnership to help us deliver against the outcomes of the Oxfordshire strategic vision that we contribute to. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Councillor Watson.
Firstly, it's not a producer interest, but just for nothing. I'm an investor in Tax Social, which was I am an investor in Tax Social, which was mentioned in the report. I just want to say I'm really pleased to see this report. I think it's fantastic work. We've got more than 100 organisations signed up now for the chapter. It's really good news. And for the county council, by doing what we can to close that gap in children's attainment is one of our agreed priorities for the county council. I think this is the work that the partnership is doing to help with that is absolutely crucial and important and fantastic. Thank you very much.
Yeah, really appreciate the actual scope of the work. What I'm interested to know though is how it impacts across the rural and urban landscapes, because a lot of the work does impact all children across. But I'm sort of interested how far it's targeted ultimately across in a fairer way, because the issues that we have in the urban areas and the rural, there's some similarities, and of course the differences, the disparity of the population is that the issues are the same. So children need to be actually sort of a more inclusive approach to the distribution of how you impact. I'd be just interested to know how that's done. My first question. And the second one is, you know, what influences literacy and that attainment target isn't always just about reading and writing. And I kind of feel that, you know, there are initiatives taken by in other parts, which I don't know if you've worked with them, people like CATS, which is it works with children using music. Because the music in the curriculum is virtually non-existent, and in a way, this is often a gateway for children to actually really to excel and achieve across other aspects of the curriculum, including literacy. And I've just kind of wondered whether, you know, you had a more holistic approach. And then you might be saying, no, we have a holistic approach, but I just wondered how you kind of factor in those things. So be interested to get your view on it.
Okay. In terms of your first question, we are really conscious about the rural-urban divide. And we've been lucky through the Marmot's work, Oxfordshire is well placed around the rural deprivation inequalities work carried out, which is something we've been conscious of but not have the ability to do. And that has identified areas within Oxfordshire for greater focus, which will help us within the partnership. So one of the organisations we're working with supporting is Assisted Reading for Children, who help provide volunteers into schools to support literacy. And so we help them looking at where the distribution of volunteers and leaders, and they always prioritise areas of deprivation first. But this additional piece of information will help them think about where else in the county they can really focus their activity and centre those rural areas. So that's something we'll be looking at this year now that we have that data available to us. And then we're also conscious of the outcomes from the recent deep dive by Marmot into children and young people, which identified that a young person living in a more affluent area but from a more deprived household does less well in education outcomes than a deprived child in a deprived area. So how do we address those issues of poverty proofing schools, etc., and not allowing that stigmatism to makes children not vulnerable the families that come forward. In terms of the other holistic area, that's not something we've actually thought about or looked at, but connected to that within the early years and primary working group, we look at parental advocacy. So looking at how we might be able to support organisations to have that parental support, linking with schools and those families that are most in need to sort of try and bridge that gap, which may then have some impact on their educational outcomes as well. But I will take that away back on the bridge as well. Thank you.
Very good answer. I can attest with my other hats on that as long as champion, I recognise all of that you're saying, and I also support the reading. I hope you do too.
I do.
That's good. Because they do a lot of good work with the inclusive economic partnership. So thank you. I can see Councillor Philip Rivers with her hands up.
Yeah, thank you so much. I hope you guys are not melting the way that I am here in this very old house. Thank you so much. It's a really interesting report. I have several questions. One of them is, I was looking at some of the tables and some of the kind of actions, and I just wondered if you had, I appreciate that a lot of your work is around kind of convening, cooperation, collaboration, etc., producing various resources. But I just wondered whether you had thought about or made an attempt to actually measure some of the impact that the partnership may be having in terms of, employment opportunities for young people, refugees, etc. Just that was one of my questions. By the way, it's really good to see that targets of some of your activities and projects, and I'm glad to see that refugees are on there, as they're a little bit of an untapped talent pool in my view. And another question I had was if you are planning any work around AI. Obviously, it is already kind of disrupting labour markets as we know them, and I wondered whether you had thought about anything on this in the future.
Thank you. So in terms of measurement, for this current year, we are working on a dashboard, which we'll be able to use to more clearly identify our impact. As we said, it's quite difficult sometimes knowing what the direct impact is of people attending an event and then going away and thinking about it and then implementing things within their own organisations. We don't always see what happens a few months down the line. But yeah, the dashboard that we're looking to create will have sort of a front sheet, which will be looking at sort of the contributing factors to deprivation, which will give sort of a system view of Oxfordshire, a dip check for us. Will help us identify areas we might want to focus more on. And then we'll have separate sheets focused on our different working group areas, our focus areas, which will refine more around our activity. So hopefully that will be able to help with identifying, our impacts, or at least that activity that we can include. And in the annual report going forward, for this annual report, we will be having it designed, and one of the pages in there will be sort of a key infographics page, which will probably pull out some of that information that you'd probably like to see into an easy to read one page. So yeah. And then in terms of AI, it's not something we've directly thought about, but we are planning an event for the end of September, beginning of October, called Opportunity for All, an employment summit for Oxfordshire, which will be in partnership with the local skills improvement plan, Equinox, and Enterprise Oxfordshire, and it will be looking at sort of where are the skills gaps, workforce planning, and then bringing in inclusive employment recruitment ideas. So I'm sure AI will form part of that discussion, but it's not something that's directly on our work plan.
Just a follow up, really briefly through the chair, if that's okay. So I've literally had a brief look at the local authority outcomes framework, and there's quite a lot of metrics around economic participation, if we put it that way. I think they're calling it economic prosperity and regeneration. I just wonder whether, again, I appreciate it's really difficult to put kind of a quantitative measure around some of the work that you do, so qualitative may be more appropriate, but I just wondered whether you had thought about the local authorities outcomes framework. There may be some useful indicators in there you can attempt to measure, or at the very least your partners could.
Yeah, I will have a look at that. Thank you.
Just a brief follow-up on that. Excuse me, members may be interested to know that the AI growth zone that is proposed for the Cullen site comes with an aspiration to embed community benefit around AI. So there is a kick-off meeting in a couple of weeks' time, organised by Business Trade with Cullen, ourselves, and your officer Nick King will be there to look at how we can construct community benefit, and we'll be wanting to talk about how we can use the opportunity of the growth zone to look at how AI is embedded into the local and foundational economy, as well as our broader tech innovation program.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I just wanted to raise a couple of things. I fully support Arch. They're very active in our area and very useful, very good feedback on tools. And equally, I was going to ask about Enterprise Oxford and Equinox, because there's clearly a synergy there that it's worth leveraging. And my question is based around upskilling, and probably reflects back on Maggie's question as well. So upskilling the existing workforce that we currently have, and obviously skills are moving forward exponentially in relation to businesses that are coming into the area. So is there a mechanism for harnessing Enterprise Oxford and Equinox to ensure that we're not missing the gap in between?
Yeah, I think that's definitely been a discussion that we've had within our inclusive employment working group, because we have various opportunities for research. And during our discussions about what we want to make sure we have a bank of research questions, so when these opportunities do come up, we're ready to go. And we've currently got the local policy lab looking at green skills for us, and mapping what green skills is across the county, but other discussions we've had about needs, but then also the upskilling within workforces. And we're also seeing sort of the over 50s, probably manual labour roles, people claiming benefits, and how do we make sure that people have the ability to change what they're doing and have the skills to, or have the ability, the opportunity to take part in other education to change their skills. That is something we're thinking about, but it's more about capacity and how we deal with that.
Okay. Thank you. Does anybody have any questions? I, for one, am very happy to be able to join you once again to some of your meetings. They always clash with the England's Economics Heartland. So now I've given that evidence. I'm very good with it. I can come to you so that I'll have much better time. So thank you very much. You did make reference to recommendations set out in the agenda, so I won't repeat them, but is everybody happy to agree them? Yeah. Thank you. And thank you for all the work you do in the team. It's very expansive and wide-ranging, and the way you have partnered with different groups and charities across the county is very impressive. To have so many plates spinning and manageable. So thank you. Well done. Yeah. So now we go to and you can be wish.
I was going to say my partner updates.
Oh, of course, yes. So item number 8 is the devolution update. Kim is here for that. So Kim, can you talk us through?
Yeah. Thank you, Chair. And for the purpose of any members of the public who might be watching, I'm the Programme Director for Devolution in Oxfordshire. And we all know that the case for devolution is quite squarely made for our area. We have a nationally significant economy, but what we don't have at the moment is the strategic coordination that would actually enable us to realise our full growth potential. And we have concerns around infrastructure, housing delivery, and also skills alignment. And so as a result of that, we submitted an expression of interest to government in December 25 for a mayoral strategic authority. But in February of this year, government's policy position changed, and they said that we had to apply for a foundation strategic authority, which would be a stepping stone to a mayoral authority. So we resubmitted an expression of interest in March. We then subsequently had some leadership changes in May, nationally as well as locally, because our minister resigned. And so we met again in June under the guidance of the new minister to discuss whether we wanted to reaffirm our commitment to devolution. And on the 17th of June, leaders did not reach consensus on proceeding with the FSA proposal. And therefore, I think it's we're not going to be in the first wave of strategic authority announcements that we are told are imminent. Just to the main concerns about why we didn't proceed at this stage, I think there were mixed views amongst the leaders that were present, but there were some concerns raised that the FSA, the Foundation Strategic Authority, is quite limited in its powers and its funding and its flexibilities, and whether that would suit the Thames Valley. There is a lack of clarity, I think, on the pathway and the timing to a mayoral model. There's been no certainty from government around that. There were some financial concerns raised that the annual running costs of a strategic authority, if we look elsewhere, around the £1 million mark. And we were offered a one-off payment of 250,000 funding from government to support the new strategic authority. And I think generally the main concern, though, was that we do need some time to get some local agreement and stronger local agreement on what the geography and the model of the new strategic authority ought to be. So what we saw in the comms coming out following the leaders meeting last week, I think that all of the councils remain committed to devolution, and they still see that as a means to unlock growth, improve infrastructure, and give our area greater control over funding and local decision making. And so I think we are likely to go into a pause period on the programme because, for a number of reasons really, but we will remain in collaboration around large projects like the spatial development strategy will continue. But the pause will give us a period over the summer to take account of some emerging decisions within government. So one is we will get the outcome of the consultation on the spatial development strategy. We can have a look at whether we want to continue with local growth planning as a result of what comes out of that spatial development strategy consultation. There's also the consultation on the overnight visitor levy, and that will confirm whether foundation strategic authorities, and indeed any strategic authorities, will be able to take advantage of that new source of funding. Of course, now we know that we are facing a leadership contest for the Prime Minister, and so the policy position in Parliament at the moment is rather uncertain as well. And of course, at the end of the summer, we will know what the outcome of the LGR decision making is. So I think that gives us an opportunity to reassess and look again at what we want to make sure that we have the right funding, level of funding, and the model for our area along the right geography that we're all content with, and with the opportunity, I think, to revisit this in December as well. Just one final point. I think there is the opportunity also, if the outcome of the SDS consultation is that Buckinghamshire is in our area, then there's a potential opportunity to re-engage with Buckinghamshire as well around a Thames Valley future strategic authority. So that is essentially it. I think over to leaders to discuss. Thank you, Chair.
Yes, there's been a lot going on the last couple of weeks. And I agree with you thoroughly. Thank you for that. Does anybody have comments or questions?
Just got one comment really, which is, I think, yes, the summary was really good, really useful. I don't want to go over anything you've already covered, except really to get to the next stage in terms of the using the pause period, if you like. It needs some attention as one of the key elements that we have to address, which is that we've got to address it because it's going to come back, and we do not want to go through the same process again, where it's quite painful for everyone involved, because there's a huge amount of work which you didn't say, and I just pay tribute to all the officers in particular who actually did so much work in order to get us to that stage, even if we didn't get the outcome necessarily that we all possibly desire. But moving forward, it's the most important thing is the next step, and what is the key thing. Let's not try and solve everything when really we've got to just solve the things that we really do need to solve. Which I think we said one is the geography anyway, and also the commitment to either or both FSA and MSA. Those to me are the key things that we need to address going forward before any of the other things that may come about. I know we're subject to externals as well, but some of these things will have to be taken into account. Well, taking control of those two issues is fundamental. We'll spend a year and a half again, actually, effectively covering everything else off. We didn't cover the key things off at the principal point. And that's just to take away my point of view for officers to sort of see how we could actually address next week.
I see you into getting them.
Yeah, I'm trying to keep it polite, but I think it is useful if we have a pause now. And hopefully the new government will clarify what it wants, because we've had about 6 different policies within the last 6 months. And working out what the government actually wants to do is like trying to nail jelly to a wall, frankly. So hopefully they will sort themselves out. They'll give us a clear idea of why they want whichever form of strategic authority they want, what the benefits to Oxfordshire will be, and we'll be able to get on and work constructively with them. My personal view is that there is a huge amount that we can do by working together with government in some form of strategic authority, but it does need to be clear what their expectations are, what the purpose of it is, what exact responsibilities we would have, and how it will be funded, and what additional benefits would come from that. And so far, that just hasn't been the case.
Thank you. Councillor Nelson.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I appreciate like you were there, Neil, and you know, nor was I last week. But I mean, it's a bit, you know, this is super frustrating, and I guess, you know, are there any other, you know, decisions that you kind of, you know, unilaterally want to take on our behalf? I mean, you know, this was 18 months of work that we all did, and you know, a huge amount by Kim, and yeah, no, thank you very much for a very good, useful summary on that. But yeah, I mean, I guess that's sort of very behind Andy on this one, which is I hope, you know, we can review as much of this work as possible, and yeah, revisit it after, you know, whatever LGR decision we indeed do get that in the next couple of weeks. But yeah, this is generally pretty frustrating. Yeah, I think we all agree that an MSA is better than an FSA, but an FSA would also be better than nothing, and now we appear to have nothing, which is yeah, very frustrating.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's an argument with that, right? Because
Yeah.
you know, there are different perspectives. I did represent the county in a previous in one of the meetings of leaders across Oxfordshire and Berkshire, which is not that long ago. And at that point, we were doing a lot of work on an MSA, and it was very clear in that meeting that we hadn't agreed the geography. So I do think that genuinely there is an issue that the government does need to really clarify what it is trying to achieve and what model of strategic authorities it wants to see, because the story has kept changing. As I say, the county council is very positive about taking that opportunity, but we have to know exactly what it is, what the benefits will be, and how it could operate, and that has kept changing.
Yeah. I've been there since the word go, and I do agree with Councillor Fawcett. We've never agreed with geography, and the goalposts have been shifting constantly, and there was no guaranteed benefit apart from some assertions that an FSA might be providing this or might be providing that. I didn't see anything that was actually concrete that was beneficial to our area, other than 250,000. Absolutely.
I just wanted to reiterate some of the things in the room and just say that basically we need to understand what is attempting to be achieved here, because that isn't clear. I don't think the reason for moving forward, the reason for the level of funding isn't clearly understood. What the benefits are moving forward, again, weren't clearly understood, other than the fact that an FSA would sound like a really great idea and could possibly deliver things.
Yeah.
So I think we really do need to start nailing down what that looks like and what we're attempting to achieve.
That's 100%. I agree. Thank you. Yes, it just wasn't clear. To me, it wasn't really about the geography as such. It was about if we were to have a geography of some whatever size, whatever shape, whatever, we would need to know what that gave and what that took, and the balance that we were seeking was just not there. So that's how I see it, and I do hope that we can over the summer come to some better understanding. And with things changing so rapidly in Westminster, and with the likely Prime Minister very keen on MSAs and various other things, we might be getting something that we haven't even had on the table yet. So you can say, Councillor Philippa Rivers, you've got your hands up.
Yeah, I will be brief, just because I think others have covered most of what I wanted to say. So first of all, yes, thank you to all the officers and indeed all of the councillors that have been engaging really positively over quite a few months, really. I do hope that this is a pause. I think it is important for us all to continue to engage. As others have said, we are to have a new Prime Minister. Quite likely it will be one who is supportive of mayoral strategic authority. So hopefully we can all get around the negotiating table before too long and settle effectively what could be quite a positive move for our communities if it is indeed a discussion which is locally led and based on local realities. So I see this as a pause with the hope that we will see you around the Thames Valley devolution table quite soon.
You, Councillor Rivers. Does anybody have any further comments or questions? So, thank you very much again for presenting. I do appreciate that, and yes, I'm sure the news will keep rolling on and things will change again. So we'll just look out and listen for the next development. But yes, if we can use the summer to sort of concentrate our minds and hopefully with a bit of direction from that one, we will be able to get a way through one way or another. So thank you. So we will go on to item number 10, which is updates from key strategic partnerships supporting delivery of. Oh, sorry. Sorry. Okay.
Yeah, so thank you, Chair. Just very briefly to talk about the board programme. I was going to raise the July meeting, the 28th July meeting with you, because there's some area of business that we were expecting to go to July around local area energy planning. It's not going to be ready for July now. And that is the principal key area of prospective business. So our, I guess I'm seeking in principle to cancel it if nothing else comes along that would make it worthwhile holding a meeting. We do have in our back pocket, as it were, some existing dates that Oxfordshire leaders are meeting, and it would be relatively easy to formalise those if there was a need to do something more on a quarterly basis. So in September we'll at least formulate that. But as it stands, I really want to believe that what we've got on the agenda at the moment.
Thank you. Yes, no, so is everybody happy to delay the July meeting?
I'm gonna guess Tim will be happy.
I'm sure he will be.
It's sorry, Chair. It's a fast moving picture.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I know. It might be. It might the whole picture might have changed by then. So, we'll note your words and your recommendation, and we will say that we will defer the 29th, unless anything pressing comes about that sort of needs our attention formally. We do have informal meetings in the diary, so if necessary, we can call one of those and come here and have a proper discussion about it. So that would be good in public. So now, and I do apologise. Item 10, which is the updates from key strategic partnerships, supporting delivery of the Oxfordshire strategic vision, including EEH and I'll let you get that.
Thank you. I just thought it would be helpful to provide you a bit of an update of what we're doing now with our next steps following on from the annual report. So as I said, we've got our Oxfordshire Anchor Network project manager in place, which is really exciting and really looking for some progress over the next 12 months in supporting those anchor institutions. In our inclusive employment focus, we're currently looking at organising a HR network seminar focusing on supporting homeless people, people experiencing homelessness into employment, and also the Opportunity for All Summit, which I spoke about during the annual report. that will be bringing to a sort of chief executive HR director level from across the 6 sectors identified through the local skills improvement plan for a day at Oxford North. Our children and young people focus, our youth futures working group, we've got 3 key areas. We're looking at work experience. So how can we work with partners to support work experience across the county for school age children, but also for young adults as well. Parenting care engagement, so a bit like the parental advocacy focus for our early years, but supporting those parents and families who have children who are facing additional barriers into education. And also green skills, which is a project with the local nature partnership, ZCOP, and Enterprise Oxfordshire. And we're waiting for the outcomes from our local policy lab project to help us think about our next steps. In our early years area, we're looking at a follow-on event from the early years summit. There's been so much activity since the early years summit with all the work from Marmot and various other pieces of work within public health and within our BCSE sector. It will be really great to showcase some of that and think about what those next steps are from the Marmot reports. And then in terms of our social value work, we have had a repeatedly asked from businesses who attend our social value working group that a local supplier directory would be really helpful for them and for procurement teams. So we're currently in proposal stage of a local supplier directory, which will be hosted on the OIAP website. That was presented to our steering group, and we're taking that forward, and we'll be piloting it over the summer, looking to launch sort of in the autumn time as well.
Thank you. Thank you. Any questions? Thank you very much. And yeah, it's very exciting. Moving forward, so let's see what happens. I was going to report my last report on the EEH before I hand over to Andy. That's great. So the EEH has focused on the various things that so obviously Oxford Cambridge Growth Corridor, the vision that is reporting general updates on that. So major updates on East West Rail, New Towns Programme, Oxford Strategic Rail, Bakes Interchange, and various other projects. Also bus integration schemes that are going and the actions from the bus symposium last year. Yes, one thing that struck me, and particularly given all the conversations about FSAs and the investment that's needed and the infrastructure that's needed in this area. So people, and it was repeated several times, that actually this region benefits from so much more infrastructure investment than other parts of the country. And it was noted as other areas are quite jealous of what we have achieved and what we have seen put into our area. So that's interesting, given that sort of what we're trying to achieve through strategic authorities, whether it be mayoral or foundational. And that was just a note from me, but yeah, it was suggested several times. So did anybody have any comments on that? If we can't Graham,
No.
taking over?
No, no, just give me the notes.
Nothing more to add. Okay, so we can head on through to item 11. Updates on matters relevant to the Oxfordshire Leaders Joint Committee, otherwise known as any other business. Does anybody have any other business? I think, Kevin, you were going to note that we have an event after this meeting, if anybody would like to stay here.
Yes, so just we've happy to facilitate during the ministers' webinar. So, 40 minutes time from now.
If anybody wants to stay. I know people look absolutely so excited by the prospect. I'll be staying. So if anybody wants to stay, you can have it on a big screen. This sounds even more exciting. This is.
Will they be making a valedictory remark?
Pardon?
Will they be making a valedictory remark?
I do know. Yes, so if anybody wants to say, please do. Any other business? No. So, item number 12, going on to dates for next meetings. We've already mentioned that we are looking to postpone the 28th of July unless there was urgent business that we yet do not know about. And the next scheduled one is for the 1st of October. But if we need something, we've got some plan.
We might decide to have in September.
So with no further ado, if nobody has anything to add, I declare the meeting closed.